What is going on, everybody? Today we're going to do another install, getting the Jeep ready to get its tons underneath. Today we're going to be working on the 14-bolt axle, and we're going to be installing the TMR Customs 52 tooth count tone rings. Now in this kit you're going to get your 2 brackets for your wheel speed sensors and your 2 tone rings. Now to do this we're going to need an impact or a ratchet, a 19mm socket, a pair of pliers, a flathead screwdriver or a pick, and then you're going to want an axle or a hub nut wrench. If you don't have that, you can get away with using a flathead screwdriver, and also going to want a pry bar. So first things first, we're going to have to go ahead and take off all of the axle shaft bolts holding it in. Now that you have all the bolts out, you can go ahead and remove the axle shaft. Now that the axle shaft is out, you're going to go ahead and use your flathead screwdriver or a pick, and you have a little clip ring in here. You want to pop that out. It's easier with a pick. I just don't have one at the moment, so that, and that'll come out once you get it off. Then the next thing you're going to need is your pair of pliers, and that's because you have a little key block in here. You just pull that out just like so. Now this is where your hub nut socket will come in place, or your screwdriver. Get in one of these little grooves and you can just spin it right off. Normally it spins very easily. You might have to give it a little tap, and I'm going to go ahead and just get it completely screwed all the way off. And now that everything is off inside, you can go ahead, take your pry bar, put it up against one of your stud bolts, just give it a little slide, and the whole hub will slide off. And once you have that side off, you're going to go ahead, come over to the opposite side, and do the exact same thing over to get this side off. So after you got both of your hubs off, you're going to have to either send them out to get machined or find a place in town that can machine them. The reason being is because instead of being straight up and down all the way around, the hubs have a slight taper. So you can't just machine out a tone ring to be the exact same size and just press fit it on because of that taper. So the top edge has to get machined down, be straight all the way around, that way you can press fit on the tone ring. Luckily, I found a guy in town who was able to do it for me last night. Dropped him off mid-afternoon. He had them done by the end of the night. Ended up being a little later, so I'm finishing it up tonight. But they nice press fit all the way on. I believe he did just over 1,000 press fit, and they're on there nice and snug, flush with the top. The one thing I did have to do is I had to press out 4 of the wheel studs just because of his machine. For it to grab onto the hub itself, he needed at least 4 of them out. That way he could get 2 of the 3 clamps on there. So got that. Now the next thing I'm going to do, press these back in, pop the bearing back in, and then we'll finish up the install of putting it back into or onto the axle. Alright, we got all the studs pressed back in. Give them a quick little coat of paint, make it look a little bit prettier. Got the bearings put back in, got the seals put back in, so we're good to go now. Now we're going to go ahead, basically do the process of taking them off in reverse and get these guys back onto the axle. So before we put the hubs back on to the axle, we're going to work on the wheel speed sensor mounts. Now these mounts on either side are going to mount up to these 2 bolts. Now what you need is, I believe I grabbed a 24mm socket. I'm going to bust both of those free. And the other thing I did is I went ahead and took out my wheel speed sensor out of one of my back wheels. That way I can test fit it in here, and before I leave I'll throw it back in. But one thing is, sometimes people have to notch out this backing plate a little bit, and you're also going to have to drill a hole into your dust shield right here so that your wheel speed sensor can go through. So first things first, I'm going to back off these two nuts and we'll get this mounted up and then we'll go from there. Now the two nuts are off, we're going to go ahead, place your bracket into place, put those two nuts on, just get them nice and snug. So as you can slightly see, the hole does not go past the backing plate, so I'm going to go ahead, take a little pick or a pencil, just kind of mark out where that hole is. That way we can go ahead and notch it out. That way our wheel speed sensor fits in there nicely without any issues. So I got it all notched out. I found the easiest thing to do was take the parking brake assembly off, take all 4 bolts off, slide it off. Might need to tap with the hammer a little bit. There's a seal on here that gonna have to press back on, tap back on. But I went ahead, put my wheel speed sensor into the bracket and roughly lined it up with the holes, and I have no issues anymore, and I can take it in and out without a problem. So we're good to go. Now I'm gonna go ahead and do the opposite side. So now for the hole that needs to be drilled into the dust plate, I'm gonna use the notch as kind of a guide, but I'm gonna take a 1-inch hole saw, just do a quick punch through into the dust cover, and that'll be it. That way the wheel speed sensor can go through no problem and detect our tone ring without any issues. So I just had a slight issue trying to put on the hub. Because of the parking brake mechanism, a couple of the teeth on the tone ring want to hit and you can't slide this in. But what I ended up doing was grabbing the little lever on the parking brake, pulling it, which opens it up just enough for this to slide in. Once it's slid in, let go, and now you're good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead, finish up putting everything back together the way it goes, and finish up this side, then go ahead and repeat all the steps on that side. So like I said, we're going to reverse the process for putting this back on. So first thing is you're going to put your hub nut back on, and getting it started sometimes is a little bit a pain in the ass, but just once you get it, it goes on nice and smooth, and get it rotated all the way down until you can't anymore with your finger. So once you've got it finger tight, you can go ahead, take your socket if you have one. If not, you can take a screwdriver, just tap it around until it gets tight enough and your key hole matches up with this. That way you can put your key back in. Once you have your hole squared up, take your little key, stick it back in. Then you're gonna go ahead, grab your little snap ring, like clean it off a little bit real quick, got a little dirt on it. Then you're gonna go ahead, get that snapped into place. Using your screwdriver helps get it roughly in place, and if you need to, twist it around just a little bit. Get off the key. Oh, fucking popped off. There we go. Alright, now we're in place. Now you're gonna go ahead, take your axle shaft, put it back in. One thing I like to do, which you'll see, so I'll stick the axle shaft in, I'll tighten down all the bolts, and then I'll take it off again, pull this out real quick just to make sure it didn't suck this in anymore, because if so, you want to make sure you tighten that nut up a little bit more. But we'll get the axle shaft back in, tighten down, and double check it. All right, so the driver's side is all done and buttoned up. Got the wheel speed sensor bracket on, backing plate ground down, hole in the dust cover, got the hub on, everything's buttoned up, all good to go. And that's basically it for installing the TMR Customs 52 tooth count tone rings and wheel speed sensor brackets on your 14-bolt axle. Now, like I said through the video, a couple little things to remember. You have to get the hubs machined. I know people have done it with a Dremel. I really just recommend spending the little extra money, having someone machine them. You'll get a lot tighter fit, it'll stay snug, and everything will be true, and you won't have any issues with something possibly being out of line or loose. So personally, I just recommend getting it machined. Also, like I said, taking the whole parking brake assembly off makes it a lot easier for grinding down the backing plate on the axle. And the 1-inch hole going through, just line it up with your groove and you shouldn't have any issues. And also don't forget to pull that parking brake lever. That way the assembly opens up enough so you can slide the hub back on. But that is basically it. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you all next time.